Game 4 was Wednesday night in Indianapolis. Pacers had a 2-1 series lead. They no longer have a 2-1 series lead. Series is now tied. Whereas for most of that game, or a lot of that game, especially like third quarter, start of fourth, it really felt like the Pacers were about to take a shocking 3-1 series lead against the Thunder. And then the Thunder kind of, strapped in, locked in, kind of just managed to. Their defense showed up, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Their defense showed up and Shea showed up. Shea had a very pedestrian to bad for his standards first three quarters. Um, the refs were letting the boys play. Whistles were swallowed. I thought there were missed fouls on both sides. But regardless, Shea wasn't great to his standards, and then he's phenomenal down the stretch in fourth quarter getting ISO buckets. Doesn't really look like anyone can guard him. Neesmith can't guard him. But really, I think the Pacers scored like one field goal in the final 4 minutes or something like that.
Yep.
But anyway, the Pacers team that had been so clutch these playoffs, were just completely stun locked down the stretch. Couldn't get anything going, and the Thunder turned that into offense and steal a game on the road to regain home field advantage, rolling into Game 5 back in OKC. I thought it was a big statement as people were starting, myself kind of included, were starting to question, like, wow, is like this team that we said is so elite gonna lose to this Pacers team, gonna go down 3-1, and it just kind of really like they had lost some of their mojo. But as we'd seen them do multiple times in these playoffs, they've answered the bell almost every time. They've gotten up off the mat every time, and they punched right back and win a big game to even the series. What were your thoughts on the game, JP?
I agree with that last part a ton. I said this was going to happen. I knew this was going to happen. I watched this game twice, actually. The first time I watched it, I only remember the fourth quarter. I was with my buddies, and there were some beverages
Sure.
being drank. But I remember the fourth quarter, and man, it was electric. Even in Elvira Cruz in Tupelo, Mississippi,
Hype.
it was very hype in there for the NBA Finals, and yeah, the OKC's defense showed up the fourth.
Could you tell if it was a
SGA showed up in
Pacers
the
or a
fourth.
Thunder crowd?
It was I think it was just an NBA crowd,
Okay,
which I think
okay.
is how this finals has felt, even for me as a Thunder fan, that like this is like just a people's series. Like we just want to see good basketball,
And we have.
we have seen excellent basketball through 4 games. SGA was huge in the fourth. I watched that fourth. I slightly under the influence at that point, but when I watched it the first time, everything felt so clutch and so big in the moment. And when I went back and watched it, it didn't necessarily have the same like energy to it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Sure.
The shots, besides SGA's 3, the shots didn't necessarily feel very clutch. It felt like the first time it felt like they were trading punches, but then I realized they were not trading punches at all. It was a complete Thunder dominance.
Yeah.
In that fourth quarter. SGA 15 in the fourth. Pacers only scored 17. It's a complete opposite of the way the fourth quarter played in Game 3. The Pacers outscored the Thunder 32-18, and this fourth it was 31-17 OKC. And they answered the bell as I expected them to do, and as they've done in every single series. They have now won Game 4 after losing Game 3 in the last 3 series on the road. And this young team is showing that they're not necessarily this young team. They're proven, they're driven, they can step up when they need to.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we've watched this Game 4 in all 3 of those series, this one, it specifically reminded me of Game 4 in the Denver series, where it felt like all the momentum was with that home team and the Pacers and the Nuggets, and it felt like the Thunder were dead and that this was about to go the wrong way for them. And then what they did was they just came back, and this is something Caruso has mentioned a ton. They just relied on their defense. They relied on who they were, and they locked down the Pacers in that fourth quarter, and they really made them struggle. I mean, 1 field goal in those last 5 minutes. Benedict Mathurin goes to the foul line and misses 4 free throws. Um, and the SGA comes down on the other side and just hits huge shots, gets to the foul line because he was fouled, not because he was foul baiting or anything. You can't put your hand on a dude's shooting arm in any capacity. That's a foul
Yeah,
in today's NBA.
Neesmith looked really poor down the stretch, and that was about the dumbest thing he could have done because yeah, I just like how do you any good player as soon as you put your hand on their shooting arm is just gonna shoot and they're gonna get the call because it's a foul. I think that's one thing I almost never understand is like how are you gonna set up in the position to foul? Like you basically have already fouled at that point. I don't know.
I think it's really hard, and I think what we lose as perspective watching these games so much is that defending these players is incredibly difficult. These are the most skilled basketball players in the world. I mean, think of when you go and hoop at the Sanderson, you're playing with an ex-JUCO guy, and he just lights you up. That guy is closer to your skill than anybody would ever be to these NBA
By a
guys. I
large
mean, a
margin.
12
Yeah, I'd say he's closer
yes,
to I guess I'm just saying is like I get how hard it is, so why are you giving the guy that's so hard to guard freebies?
because if you don't contest well enough, like they're going to knock down the shot.
Sure.
These are guys that make 80% of their shots in warm-ups, and uncontested is essentially a warm-up jumper for them. And especially the MVP of the league, like you got to try to contest in some capacity. And realistically, in the long run, it may almost be more effective to foul him than it is to let him have the wide open mid-range jumper, because that's 2 guaranteed points versus he's got to shoot 2 free throws to get the 2.
Yeah, I think in my eyes though, it almost wasn't even like in the flow. I mean, it is in the flow of the game, but it was almost like a size up. And Neesmith is like just reaches out, puts his hand on his shoulder, like it wasn't even like he was scrambling or anything. It just seemed like a blatant mistake in my part, which I get. Like it's still so difficult. I'm not trying to take it away, but I just think in that position, Neesmith, who's been heralded as this really good defender, just does that, and it's really frustrating to see. And then also the discourse around it sucks as well. So
I think it undermines how good SGA is. I think even an elite defender as Aaron Neesmith is, SGA is the MVP of the league. He's going to beat Neesmith at times, and he beat him in the fourth quarter multiple times.
yeah, I mean he
So
wanted that
I wouldn't
switch. He was
chalk it up
switching off Nimhard to get on Neesmith, like which was like a complete 180 from where we had been. But
sure. SGA saw food and he wanted to go get it. That's what an MVP does. That's what a future champion does. And SGA did that in the fourth quarter. I wouldn't chalk it up to Neesmith being dumb or anything. I would just say Neesmith got beat, and that's going to happen.
yeah, I think
MVP of the league.
I mean, I agree. It's a statement from Shea. I think we're gonna have to agree to disagree on that one play right there because I think that was not Shea beating Neesmith. That play to me was Neesmith beating Neesmith.
Sure.
Other things about the game, just kind of thinking back on it and watching, and also I'd like to point out I said this game happened on Wednesday. That's incorrect. It happened on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I was on vacation, so days don't really exist, or days of the week don't really exist
True.
on vacation. Caruso was phenomenal in this game, especially in the first 3 quarters where the Thunder didn't have much going. He ended up finishing with 20 and had 5 steals. Just massive minutes from Caruso, and he's had massive minutes this whole postseason. But I thought it was almost at another level last night. Chet, I think, locked in down the stretch as the whole team did. But then just other like trends and stats from this game. The Thunder had to be so great defensively because aside from Shea, they were not really scoring. I mean, they hit 3 threes all game, which is for modern NBA is insane. They only shot 16, so like it's not like they went 3 for 30 or something insane like that, but 18% from 3. Shea finishes with no assists for the first time in 5 years, which I think just also once again highlights that it had to be him down the stretch. He had to step up, and he did. But just from the looking at the numbers standpoint, it's kind of shocking that OKC won the game. It doesn't actually really feel like that watching it because of how good their defense was, and I think that's what I'm trying to highlight is just how magical almost their defense was down the stretch, and it had to be.
Sure. Yeah, three threes is an insane stat. Andrew asked the question, one of our friends during the game, can OKC win this game by hitting so few threes? And I told him yes. This is something that they can do. It's something that they have done this season. They're that good defensively. Now, three, though, is I didn't expect them to finish out with three. At that time, it was around halftime. They had 1 3-point made. Their lowest this season so far is 8. In fact, they won 6 games this season, hitting less than 10 threes in a game, which still by NBA standards today is insane. So, yeah, I didn't expect them to finish with 3, but I knew that they defensively were good enough to win a game where they didn't hit as many threes. And
Sure.
when you look at their team, they're not a big three-point shooting team. There is not one guy in that starting 5 that's known for hitting threes. There's not really one guy off the bench that's known for hitting threes. So this is kind of their style of basketball. They are a defend, force turnover, push in the fast break. On the offensive end, they play through SGA, and then they play in the pick and roll game. They play the lob game really well with Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. And they're a pick and pop. Really, like the only guy that like is technically known for shooting threes and making threes is Lou Dort. And we've talked about that, where he is a guy we don't really want him shooting threes at times because he shoots some bad ones. But he's like the only guy that's his offensive go-to move is to shoot a three.
Which props to him. He shot it pretty well so far, kind of recently in the playoffs. I still do not want him taking a shot, but he's hit some big ones. I mean, he hit one of the 3 in Friday's game. So
yeah, I mean, Isaiah Joe is really the only guy that's going to shoot a ton of threes, and he's been playing less than 5 minutes a game this series. So this is something they can do. They're that good defensively, and they are great still in the half court, as they showed down the stretch in the fourth quarter that hitting 3 threes is not going to phase this team.
Yeah.
Which if they were to win the championship would be crazy. It'd be an insane parallel to the Celtics that won it last year, where you had a team that was basically only known for hitting threes. With this OKC team, it's defense. Threes is really last on the table.
And going back to the Isaiah Joe playing, he only got 5 minutes in Game 4. I think that tells you exactly how they feel about hitting threes. They don't view it as a necessity, right? Because Isaiah Joe's not the best defender, so that's why he doesn't play. Whereas some teams would be like, well, this guy isn't the best defender, but he's our best shooter, so like we have to find him minutes. OKC's like, nah, we'll just rely on our defense to win these games, and we'll find other ways to score, which, like you said, it's a very different stylistic or just, basketball philosophy from the mainstream stuff, like the Celtics shooting 63s in a game and stuff like that. All right, going into Game 5, JP, how do you see Game 5 playing out? Do you see the Pacers responding, even if they don't win the game? Do you think they can kind of bounce back from a pretty brutal loss at home, all things considered? I know they weren't up by like 15 or anything like that, but it really felt like they let that game slip away. I know they're probably viewing it as such, even though it really was OKC played just phenomenally down the stretch. But you could even kind of see it on some of the guys' faces, even as the final whistle blows, and Howley just he looked pretty defeated. Personally, I expect them to bounce back. But what do you expect to see in Game 5?
Well, Game 4 was a must-win for the Pacers, in my opinion. I thought winning Game 4 was the only chance they had to win this series. But that kind of flipped, and I said it. When OKC grabbed that lead late in the fourth quarter, I thought it then became a must-win for OKC to have a chance in this series, because they had to fight, tooth and nail to get back into this game and
Yeah.
to hit as little threes as they had and to get 20 points from Caruso. They needed to close that game out, and they did. So in Game 5, I expect them to play better, especially the other guys. Shea, without Alex Caruso, like SGA and Jalen Williams were really the only guys that were really productive. Chet Holmgren had some huge offensive rebound putbacks in the fourth quarter. But outside of that, he wasn't a threat. And their next leading scorer had 6 points with Lou Dort. So I expect the role players to play a lot better. I expect them to shoot the three better because of that. I mean, they shot 18% from three.
Kind of hard to replicate that.
Yeah, and we look back on Game 2, like Aaron Wiggins hit 5 threes, and Lou Dort hit a couple, and Cason Wallace did.
And they're also going home, and role players play better at home. So
correct. I expect that to be something to return in Game 5, and because of that, and because of the confidence that OKC got with how well they played defensively in the fourth quarter, and that crowd is going to be electric, I don't see a way where the Pacers win this game outside of what they did in Game 1, which is pull off a miracle. And
sure.
I really feel like that's the only way they win a game on the road going forward in this series is pull off a miracle, which is why I thought Game 4 was a must-win for them. So I think OKC wins this. I think they're going to win by 10+. I think they're going to play with a ton of energy. A big problem for the Pacers is because they're so reliant on being productive offensively that when they get in a spot where like they want to set the tone and bring the momentum and respond, they have to be able to shoot the ball well for that to even be a possibility. They can't just say, all right, we're going to give 100% effort on defense because they're not good enough defensively outside of guys like Nesmith and Nimhard. They aren't good enough defensively to do that together as a team and shut down a team and take over a game. And they especially aren't good enough to do that on the road.
Yeah.
So I just don't see how the Pacers can punch OKC in the mouth in Game 5 unless they were to shoot the three ball at a very high rate and shoot it at a very productive rate. So Thunder by 10. Pacers' only chance is to win on another miracle, another one of their comebacks, or OKC just, for whatever reason, doesn't get the production out of their role players that I expect them to get.
Sure. I kind of agree. I think OKC wins this game. I will say, you're talking about the Pacers needing a miracle. They're very good at finding miracles and performing miracles. But yeah, it's OKC at home where they've been so great. They defend really well at home. I don't know. I feel like that mojo they found at the end of Game 4 is going to roll over, and this may be just a game where they're suffocating from the jump defensively, and they jump out to a pretty big lead. I completely agree that the Pacers are going to have to hit shots to answer, and that's not as reliable as good defense. So I like OKC in Game 5 to take a 3-2 series lead.
I'm going to stick with picking the Pacers. I had my victory text prepared. I was about to be like, we're up 3-2, go Pacers. I'm 3-1 in my, or not 3-2, 3-1. I was about to be like, I'm 3-1 in my NBA Finals picks. Then they ended up losing that game late. So glad I didn't start doing my victory lap early, but I will pick the Pacers again. They've already won once in OKC. They've beat OKC twice this postseason to show, like, they've shown that they can beat the Thunder. So I'm going to pick them to win in Game 5. It was a really tough loss, but sorry, I'm watching this baseball game while I was trying to talk. I think that the Thunder I think both teams are going to be exhausted going into this next game. Because it was the Thunder had to expend so much energy to get back and come back and win that game in the fourth quarter. So, and then the Pacers are just going to be emotionally exhausted because they had the lead in their home arena and lost it.
Yeah.
So
it does help they get 2 days off.
Correct.
But I will say, I think the Pacers are going to need borderline a miracle to win it. I think one of the reasons this series has been so fun, in theory, and it's also played out this way, is these have been two of the best teams at responding in these playoffs, both in game and then from game to game. They just kind of have that swagger that's required to do that. So it is interesting to see if the Pacers can punch right back. I don't necessarily see it happening, but if there is a team that I think could lose a game like they did in Game 4 and go on the road to the best team in the NBA and put up a good fight, it's the Pacers. So